The next thing I'd like to talk to you about as part of the nuts and bolts in preaching, 5 issues: voice maintenance, PowerPoint, lecterns, venue and sound. First of all, let's have a talk about voice maintenance. I mentioned this earlier in communication. You need to look after your voice. It's your number one tool as a preacher. Keep your throat moist. You should always have a glass of water handy. Don't strain your voice. If you actually have trouble with your voice, it's worth seeing a speech therapist about how to look after your voice. They'll tell you to stay away from caffeine, he says with massive hypocrisy. Next, PowerPoint. Don't do too many slides. Beware of death by PowerPoint. It's a terrible thing to inflict on an audience. I actually put a box in my notes each time I want to use a slide so I know what's coming up. And also if someone else is running the PowerPoint, they know when to click and bring the slides up. Don't put lots of big quotes into the slides, just a picture of the author and read it. It's another rule that I break all the time. Just a little tip, it's worth printing an extra copy of your notes and giving them to the tech guys so they know what the PowerPoint is meant to do in case the clicker in your hand doesn't work, etc. That's a tip for young players. Number 3, next up, the lectern. Ideally, use the smallest lectern that you can find, i.e. the audience needs to see the maximum amount of you for the most communication. Okay, more of you equals more communication. And get as close to people as you can. You don't want to be in the diving board pulpit 20 feet in the air, or the bunker where it comes up to here, etc. A music stand is ideal. And then, here's a little tip, adjust the top of the lectern so it's reasonably high, maybe at the level just above your waist, so that your head doesn't have to go fully up and fully down every time you look at your notes. Okay, you'll end up looking like one of those glass birds that bob in the... So have the top of the lectern high enough so that eye contact isn't too difficult. Okay, when you stand up to speak, just take 10 seconds to get organised. Get your notes in the right place, a glass of water. Just take an internal deep breath, be calm. They will wait. They hardly ever leave. Okay. If you're speaking in a barbecue or a restaurant or something, just assume that there won't be a lectern, because very often they're not set up for public speaking. In terms of venues, you want to think about what's behind you. In your standard church, you're not really able to adjust things much, but if you're speaking in a restaurant or a school hall, beware of, an open door behind you or some huge window that looks out onto a beautiful vista. They're all distractions. I know one night I gave a talk in a Spanish restaurant to a restaurant full of guests, and they stood me up to speak between 2 pictures painted of naked ladies. It wasn't ideal. Another thing to be aware of is timing in a church meeting. If you have any control, try and get up early in the meeting so that you've got time to preach and that people aren't tired or looking at their watches, etc. If you get up at the end of things, it's not as good an opportunity for clear minds. One other thing that's worth considering, and that is introducing question and answer time after sermons. Now, that particularly allows non-Christian people to ask questions and wrestle with the passage. It holds people's attention. Now, only introduce Q&A time if you've got the time, and put a time limit on it, how long it goes for. And here's a tip for you to stop Q&A being scary. If someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, you just say, "That's a good question. I don't know the answer. I'll try and find out." There you go. And finally, microphones. If you're planning a church, you need a quality microphone, probably more than you need a truckload of sound gear. And always do a sound check with the microphone before you get up. Okay. Now, these have been a series of just short videos trying to get us to engage with the theology, the practice of preaching, to think it through more clearly and at a deeper level. Haddon Robinson's book on expository preaching, it's been in print for 40 years. It's still available. That's a testament to the quality of it. There's a link to Haddon Robinson's book on expository preaching in the notes, as well as a whole range of sermons that you'll be able to analyse now, to pull apart, to put back together, and become more effective as a preacher.